California's governor wants to give out cash. A major gas pipeline is hacked. And the U.S. responds to the Israel Palestine conflict. That and more on this week's headlines. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. The CDC has announced vaccinated Americans can go without masks indoors and outdoors. If this feels long overdue, you're right. Because a recent report found the CDC's estimated risk of contracting coronavirus outdoors was greatly exaggerated. The CDC said the risk of outdoor transmission was less than 10%. But that was based partly on a misclassification of virus transmission in Singapore at sites that may have been indoors. So saying the risk of outdoor transmission is less than 10% is true, but misleading. The actual risk is closer to being below 1% or even 0.1%. That's kind of like saying my chance of winning the lottery while knocking out Jake Paul is less than 110%. Technically, it's true. But when it's worded like that, I like them odds. Speaking of odds, if you live in New York City and are hoping to get into bars and nightclubs, but you haven't been vaccinated, your chances aren't looking too good. Because vaccine passports could be the new ID for getting into establishments in the city. And if you're thinking you can just use a fake ID to get into bars, like you did back in college, or middle school if you've been able to grow a beard since 6th grade, you might want to think twice, since a proposed bill would make forging and possessing counterfeit vaccination cards a felony. Here in New York, we don't take kindly to forged documents. It's an insult to people like me, who put in the work to become a vaccinated unicorn wrangler and award-winning supermodel smoocher. I'm legit. But maybe you're among the 1 in 5 Americans who don't plan to get a COVID-19 vaccine. Maybe you don't like getting shots. Maybe you have religious objections. Or maybe you just want to wait until the experimental vaccines finish their long-term phase 3 trials. Well, if you are one of these people, don't worry. President Biden respects your choice to get vaccinated or wear a mask until you do. You'd think Joe Biden would be more sympathetic to people facing pressure when it comes to choices about their own bodies, since he's willing to be at odds with the Catholic Church to defend his own pro-choice stance on abortion. Biden told Americans that if you've been vaccinated, you don't have to wear your mask and you can shake hands. You can even give each other a hug. Whoa, Mr. President, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. The CDC didn't say we could shake hands or hug people, which is what I'm going to tell my mom the next time I see her. Sorry, Mom, no hugs. In response to a reporter asking how Biden was going to enforce unvaccinated people to keep wearing masks, Biden said that he won't. Good news, everyone. The U.S. government is not going to go out and arrest people for not wearing a mask, even if they are unvaccinated. America, land of the free. And speaking of making choices about their own bodies, why are so many unemployed Americans choosing not to work? More after the break. Welcome back. U.S. unemployment is still pretty high, around 6%. And yet businesses, especially in the restaurant and hospitality industries, are desperately trying to find employees. If you're wondering if expanded unemployment benefits are contributing to this labor shortage, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says she doesn't believe so. And I agree. Because why would anyone want to be paid to stay home and binge Netflix when they could earn less money by going out during a pandemic and spending 8 hours a day dealing with nightmare customers and unclogging toilets at Del Taco? That's way more fulfilling. Even though the White House said they didn't see any compelling evidence that unemployment benefits are a factor in the labor shortage, President Biden announced that Americans who turn down suitable jobs will lose their unemployment benefits. This news is especially tough for several people in New York who were recently forced to turn down a very suitable job forging vaccination cards. Some businesses are even offering extra incentives to find workers. Chipotle is raising their wages to an average of $15 an hour, offering opportunities for promotion to general manager and giving referral bonuses to employees. Wait, by holding out, workers are actually driving up their worth? I'm glad to see the U.S. labor force is using the exact same strategy as Dogecoin investors. Hold the line, everyone. We're going to take burrito making to the moon. Chipotle is going to need all the workers they can get because they seem to be the ones providing blankets at border control detention centers. And speaking of which, the number of migrant children held in government custody has more than doubled in the last 2 months, with tens of thousands of children being packed into facilities with little oversight. Some of the practices used by this current administration are the same ones Joe Biden criticized former President Trump for using. Southern Poverty Law Center attorney Luz Lopez said, "It's almost like Groundhog Day. Here we are back to a point almost where we started, where the government is using taxpayer money for building large holding facilities for children instead of using that money to find ways to more quickly reunite children with their sponsors. Hey, this isn't anything like Groundhog Day, because when this was happening under Trump, these were kids in cages. Under Biden, these are kids in holding facilities. You see, it's completely different. Kind of like how when Trump builds a wall, it's xenophobic, while when Biden continues building the same wall, it's creating infrastructure jobs. But Joe Biden is not a hypocrite. He just wants to do what's best for his constituents, as does California Governor Gavin Newsom. Newsom has proposed using his state's massive surplus to give tax rebates to millions of Californians. California's projected $75.7 billion budget surplus is largely due to taxes paid by rich Californians who generally did pretty well during the pandemic. And some of the richest people even benefited at the expense of the poor. According to a report from the Institute for Policy Studies, CEOs from some American companies with the lowest paid workers saw an average pay raise of 29% last year, while worker pay fell by 2%. So essentially, Newsom's proposed tax rebate is the government taking from the rich and then giving a portion of that to the poor. It's just like the story of Robin Hood, if Robin Hood was the governor, whose policies made it harder for the villagers in the first place. And if the story ended with the villagers refusing to go back to work and collecting unemployment benefits instead. But the bright side is, Governor Newsom proposed these rebates because he cares about the well-being of Californians. It's definitely not because he's hoping to butter up voters ahead of the upcoming recall election. Wait, he's not Robin Hood, he's Santa Claus. With the money they receive from this payout, Californians can finally afford to pay their rent, assuming they move somewhere outside of California. Honestly, driving California into the ground is smart on Newsom's part. If everyone flees the state, there won't be anyone left to vote him out of office. Galaxy brain move, Newsom. Speaking of people being voted out, on Wednesday, House Republicans ousted Liz Cheney from her leadership position. This is in response to her clashes with Donald Trump, which I covered last week. Cheney responded,
I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office.
Donald Trump reacted to this on his From the Desk of Donald J. Trump website, saying, "Liz Cheney is a bitter, horrible human being. I watched her yesterday and realized how bad she is for the Republican Party. Trump is unfriending people who disagree with him and creating an echo chamber of supportive enablers who like everything he does. Man, he must really miss Facebook. You'll be able to tell he misses Instagram when he starts wearing sepia sunglasses to give his lunch the perfect filter." More after the break. Welcome back. We spoke about Chipotle earlier. In other news involving something that gives gas to millions, the Colonial Pipeline, which supplies almost half of the East Coast's gasoline. It was the victim of a ransomware attack that crippled its fuel supply operations for 6 days. It led to gas shortages on the East Coast, driving up demand as well as prices. According to reports, the Colonial Pipeline paid hackers $4 to $5 million to get back up and running. The gas shortage led to panic buying, and officials are warning people not to fill plastic bags with gasoline, something which has happened in the past. Obviously, this is something you should never, ever do. Plastic is terrible for the environment. Only fill paper bags with gasoline, you knuckleheads. To help with gas supply and demand, former President George W. Bush suggested we could always invade Iraq again. He didn't actually say that, but you know he thought it. Speaking of conflict in the Middle East, there's kind of a big story this week. Palestinian militants in Hamas-controlled Gaza launched rockets at Israel. It was in response to Israel launching rockets at Gaza, which was in response to Gaza launching hundreds of rockets at Israel. And we could do that all day going through decades of conflict. At this moment, there seems to be no end in sight to the fighting. It's the heaviest fighting between both sides since 2014. Obviously, this is a very complex situation. And to adequately cover the whole story, we'd need an entire other channel, Middle East Unoiled, which we'd release right after debuting Antarctica Unfrozen. But this is America Uncovered, so we'll focus on the U.S.'s reaction to the conflict. Republicans and Democrats both criticize Hamas for its attacks on America's ally, Israel. New York City mayoral candidate Andrew Yang stood in support of Israel, until he was criticized by his followers and peers, then he walked it back a bit. Progressive Congresswoman Ilhan Omar criticized Israel, saying Israeli airstrikes killing civilians in Gaza is an act of terrorism. Palestinians deserve protection. Many will tell you Israel has a right to defend itself, to safety and security, but are silent on whether Palestinians have those rights too. It seems the only thing Ilhan Omar believes doesn't need to be defended is the filibuster. Ultimately, the Israel-Palestinian conflict is complicated. The only thing that is clear is that politicians will continue to use divisive rhetoric to appeal to their bases, which will definitely lead to a lasting, peaceful resolution to problems in the Middle East. The odds of that are less than 110%. So what do you think about the stories we covered this week? Leave your comments below. And remember, America Uncovered is supported mainly by viewers. Be sure to visit patreon.com/AmericaUncovered. Contribute $1 or more per episode. We rely on your support to help us keep making great episodes. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.